Of all the molecules or of all the atoms that we've talked about, carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, whatever I'm missing, um, oxygen, carbon is the most important one. Remember, carbon makes 4 covalent bonds. So as long as I have carbon, I can make like big molecules, right? If I have just hydrogen and oxygen only, I can't. I can't make anything out of it. They're like those. Most of you aren't going to know this, but some of you might. Like those old school Lego pieces. You got that one Lego piece that has like, it looks like that. And as long as you had a lot of those, you could keep building. You could build like whatever molecule you wanted, right? And then at the bottom end of it, you had like, these were kind of like the last pieces that look like this. And then you had like a couple of these pieces too. Those were our 4 Lego pieces like when I was a kid. That was it. It wasn't all like pre-built and $120. And if you're thinking about buying it for your kids, don't. If you find like some of these at a garage sale, fine. They're just gonna throw them on your floor and you're gonna step on them. Kind of amazing the amount of money we waste on our kids. And it's really selfish. It's not about the kids. That Disneyland trip was about us trying to recreate something from our childhood that we think we had. They're fine just to play in the dirt outside the hotel. They're totally good with that. We're the ones taking all the pictures. Same thing like Christmas, huh? It's really about, you want to see your kids all happy. It's not about the kids, actually. That's just another day. They're getting toys. That's Friday. That's a Wednesday. All right. Anyway, Legos. As long as I had these, I can keep building and keep building. I would use these for like to accessorize. Like, how do you know it's like a? You want to try to take it? Yeah. How do you know it's a like a battleship versus a house? All right, to use those. I'm gonna keep talking. All right, I'm gonna keep talking while you take it. How do you know it's how do you know it's like a battleship versus a house versus a car or whatever? We use like these pieces for it, but this like forms the bulk, right? So that's our carbon, and this would be, I guess, in this analogy, nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen. They're important. That's how you tell one molecule apart from another one. But carbon's like the main player. So anything with carbon, we call it organic. That's like a different. Then inorganic would be without carbon. That's different than what we think of typically, but we're talking about like in chemistry and biology. So for example, water, right? Spring water, it's inorganic. It doesn't have any carbon in it. It's H2O. It's just hydrogen and oxygen. But the bottle, that plastic bottle that the water is sitting in, that we're going to throw away, that is organic. So don't feel bad about that ending up in like some dolphin's stomach or whatever. It's organic. It's got carbon. It was made from oil. It's made from petroleum, which came from underground, wherever they got it, which we used to be dead dinosaurs. So anything that is living or once living is organic, but also things like, gasoline and jet fuel and a diamond ring, that's organic, right? It's just all carbon. But really, we think in biology when you tell me like organic, I start thinking about like something that's living or something that was living. You know, like decaying leaves or dog. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, you get the idea. All right, so back to these molecules. They're hydrocarbons. For us, we don't care. Why does it look like this or this or this? Why isn't it longer, shorter? Why does it have 2 carbons or 1 carbon? Don't care. Don't care. This is just, you look at it and you say, oh, there's only carbons and hydrogens. Okay, it's a hydrocarbon. This is like a skeleton that we're going to mess with to make different molecules. But the base of it, and maybe in a video I talked about like Mr. Potato Head. I don't know if you remember, if you ever saw it. It's just like the potato, and you put different stuff on it to make it like a cowboy Mr. Potato Head versus a construction worker Mr. Potato Head. But it all starts with the potato, and then you put like different things on it, right? So the potato is the hydrocarbon, even though it looks like they're different shapes and sizes, but it's still a hydrocarbon. And then eventually, in a few slides from now, we're gonna like do stuff and mess with it to give it different properties. So all you need to know is that those are hydrocarbons. This thing's way somewhere else. I'm just going to go to the screen. It feels good to do that, and it works. But that's just to remind you. I'm going to miss it. That's just to remind you the bonds that they made. Again, more, right? More hydrocarbons. They're using the word carbon skeleton, which is also like a good way to describe it, right? And often, like in chemistry, they're almost always written like in ring form. So when you see things again, it's going to be most often written in some kind of ring form. I hate ring forms because I can't wrap my mind around it. But that's what you're going to see most often. These will be like if you cut it and then just flatten it out, right? So I like working with this better. But again, they're all hydrocarbons. They're all carbon skeletons. Look at this one here. If you look at what's in it, it's got the same stuff. It's got 4 carbons, and it's got 10 hydrogens. That'd be kind of like another way to write it. What are all those dashes in between them? All these dashes. Yes. See me like eyeing you a little bit. Covalent bonds. What about this one? Yeah, double covalent bond. If I write C4H10, it doesn't really tell you the shape of it or anything. It just tells you like what's in it. There's 4 carbon atoms and there's 10 hydrogen atoms. You don't really know anything else, but you're going to assume that they're all covalent bonds. But see how their shape is different? Butane, isobutane. I don't even know what that is. I know it's lighter butane, but that's all I know. But one's like an upside down T, and then the other one's like a straight line across, right? So we call those isomers. They have the same atoms in it, but they're shaped a little bit differently. They will act different too. I have no idea how they act, how they're different. I mean, as far as like what they do, but I'm sure they burn it at different temperature or something like that. Same thing if you look at the one on the bottom left where it says butene, 1-butene, 2-butene, whatever that is. Those are isomers. We call them structural isomers. You know, the structure's a little bit different. You know, the shape. That's a little bit different. Here's a question for you that's kind of like jumping ahead a little bit. So it involves you thinking about it. But look at like the one on the top left. It says like ethane and propane, and then look at the butane. All the ones on the top. It's like they're surrounded with hydrogens. There's like hydrogens everywhere, right? But if you look at the two on the bottom left, the 1 and 2 butene or whatever it is, it's like they're missing hydrogens, right? They're not all the way around. So like, why are those missing? I'll give you a hint. Think about how many, you answered this in your quiz. Think about how many covalent bonds each atom can make. If you're waiting for someone else, there's no one else. It's you. You're the someone else. Think about each atom, each of the 4 we talked about. How many bonds can each one make? Well, only 2. It's awkward. Important thing here is don't make eye contact with me. So I might zero in on you. Preferably look down at your notes, pretend like you're looking for the answer. Really? Okay. What about carbon? Look at the carbons. How many bonds can carbon make? They can make 4. Can they make 3? They don't typically do that. They don't do that. They just make 4. So here, every C, you're going to see 4 dashes coming out. Each dash represents a bond that they're sharing an electron, right? So again, like imagine carbon has 4 arms, right? So like 1, 2, 3, 4. But look here, I cannot put a hydrogen there or there because that would make it 5. This carbon here is using 2 of its arms to grab onto another carbon. So it's only got 2 arms left. So if this carbon wants to use its other arm to grab onto this carbon, you gotta let go of this. Now it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. Same thing here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you gotta let go of a hydrogen. That's why there's no hydrogens there. When you see like a space there in some kind of hydrocarbon, then you're going to see like a double covalent bond. Carbon's using 2 of its 4 arms to grab onto another carbon. That means you don't have 3 arms left to grab onto hydrogen. You only have 2. That's going to become important later. When we talk about like different fats. But again, the point here, the main point I was making was that these are all hydrocarbons. This is a picture that I'm going to pull up. It's just another picture of isomers. Once I get it. I do this all the time. So that's the isomers. And we talked about them. Structural. Actually, that's the one we did, huh? It is. The butane and the isobutane. Try to learn little prefixes and suffixes when you can, and like words. Iso, I don't know the exact meaning of it, but it means like the same. So whenever you see iso in a word, it'll mean similar or the same. The little words, like if you ever have to take medical terminology, for example, don't blow it off. It's an easy A. Take your flashcards, Quizlet, whatever. Next slide, next slide, next slide. Take your test, bam, done A. Probably cheat your way through it. I don't blame you, but you're cheating yourself because that's the cheat language. You're cheating yourself because you're cheating yourself out of future opportunities to cheat. The language is the cheat code. I don't have special, like if you ever hear me in the future say a big word, there's nothing special about me. I took a bunch of small words and I put it together, that's all. I just learned the language. And it's when I see something in biology, it doesn't become just like oh, I can't understand, like, what the hell is that word? Wait, what's that word? I gotta write it down. Right, so learn the little words like iso, and mer means part. So if somebody says, oh, polymer technology, you're not like thrown off by it. You're like, oh, mer means part, and poly means many. Oh, polymer, you mean many parts? Big deal. So an isomer just means part. Iso means like the same, meaning that these two parts are like looking the same. So there's three types of isomers. Structural, I don't really care about geometric, probably not going to come across them in biology again. You will occasionally come across that bottom one, which is an enantiomer. It's a mirror image. So I've actually got a couple examples. It's a mirror image. The molecule is the same. Everything's like the same. That's an example. It's, the medication for Parkinson's disease. It's like the mirror image, and it looks like it works. Like when you look at the molecular structure, it looks like everything's where it should be. It was just flipped around. Same thing with like Ritalin. Once in a while, they'll make a bad batch of Ritalin. Everything looks good, just it's an enantiomer. So little Harrison's still bouncing off the walls. He won't just sit on the couch all day with his iPad. Something's wrong with Harrison. Problem's probably not with Harrison. With Jackson. All my kids' friends, my smaller kids' friends, they all have names after presidents. Harrison, Jackson, Clinton, all their last names. Oh, hey, Ford. Ford? You have your kid 2 last names? That's his name? And he's got a peanut allergy? And you keep putting suntan lotion on him? He's all pasty white? That's not right. Don't do that to little Jackson. He's got hay fever again. All right, I know I'm talking so much shit today. Your sex hormones, they're enantiomers. They're very similar. They all come from cholesterol. Anyway, that's just an example. I'm not going to ask you on the test. When I say enantiomer, you think mirror image. That'll take care of that. I want to go back to this, but now that I'm thinking, what I want to do is like turn this off for a second and like write on the board because I think it might be a little easier. But before I do that, does anyone have any questions on anything pertinent that I might have said today?
Yeah, before we get too far, I just wanted to ask if you had to give a definition to an isomer, what would that be?
The same atoms for the structural isomer, same atoms, different shape.
And you said that's the same for a structural isomer?
That's a structural isomer. And then the enantiomer, same atoms, same shape too, just mirror image. So I was saying earlier, I was talking about stupid Mr. Potato Head because I don't have any analogies that are suitable for anyone under 40. But I was talking about like all the different shit you put on the potato to make it look like a different type of Mr. Potato Head. You're gonna have to look it up if you don't know it. But that's what these are. These are the hats and glasses and all that stuff. These are called functional groups. And so you have them in chemistry also. So these are functional groups. We're going to go over them. There are like 6, whatever's up there. That's how many there are. But I'd rather write it so I can make it bigger and I can manipulate it and do stuff to it. And this is surely on the video, which I haven't posted yet, which I will post today. I just didn't want to post it before now. So let me turn this off and start writing, and then I'll turn this back on. And after this, it's probably a good time for a break, after I talk about functional groups. So I don't talk about like my kids' friends. You know what really started it with Jackson? His peanut allergy. And if you got kids, it is such a pain in the ass to make lunch. I hate making lunch. Well, I don't make lunch anymore. My kids are old. But when they were young, I couldn't stand it. And now Jackson, with his peanut allergy, he's taken peanuts out of the equation. What am I supposed to use for lunch now? Like no peanut butter? Like, you'll see it's really hard. They're so judgy at schools. They want it to be all healthy. Like, why? We're just going to feed them shit when they get home. We're going to go get them Taco Bell on the way home. All right, I'm done. It's got me going about Jackson. Purple. All right, I'm going to draw an carbon skeleton, a hydrocarbon. Random. I always go straight across. That's like the easiest. So I'm just going to put some. That's not I'm going to put some carbons on here. This is usually how I do it. I just draw 3 or 4 carbons. I can go bigger or smaller. By the way, when we talk about molecules, we usually talk about it with the number of carbons. So this is going to be a 4-carbon molecule. That doesn't. Of course, there's going to be H's around it. All I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go like that. And I just made, and I put H's around it. Because each carbon is going to have 4 bonds. And then I draw in some hydrogens. It's no secret. You can make yours longer, shorter. It's your notebook. So I just made it like that. Kind of simple. I didn't make any particular shape to it. I didn't put any double bonds. No reason. Because all we care is that we look up there and we say, I see carbons, I see hydrogens. That's all I see. It's a hydrocarbon. That's it. Now I'm going to do a couple things to it to make it act different. So I'm going to add what we call a functional group to it. Give it a different function. Right, so I'm going to pick one of those hydrogens, just no particular one. I'm just picking any one of them. And I'm going to add an oxygen in there. So, take this one. So that, circled in red, changes the whole molecule now. As soon as I added that oxygen in there, that made what I circled in red, we call that a hydroxyl. And now this whole molecule is water soluble. I don't know what the molecule is. I've got no idea what it's called. I don't know anything about it. I only know that it's water soluble because I see a hydroxyl. I see a carbon skeleton, and circled in red, I see a hydroxyl. That's it. So I know it's water soluble. It's just recognizing. I'm not going to make you draw anything. Just you look at it and recognize it. And even the name hydroxyl, it's like a combination of hydrogen and oxygen. If you were to like put those two words together, hydroxy, with an L, hydroxyl. That's it. I can put more. I can make all of those hydrogens. I can put a bunch of hydroxyls. I can move that one to a different. We don't care. Just I see it. That molecule is water soluble. Doesn't matter where it is. They write it differently. We actually write them like this. This is shorthand for that. Because when I see this, like I know that it's the oxygen that's attached. Because oxygen only makes 2 bonds, right? So if you look at oxygen, 1, 2. Hydrogen only makes 1. So there's no way I could put the oxygen here. Impossible. Hydrogen only can grab onto one thing. This hydrogen's grabbing onto carbon. Can't grab anything else. So oxygen's here. And if you see carbon's grabbing onto 4 things all the time. But that's like shorthand. Doesn't matter where I put it, how many I put. It's the same thing. It's water soluble. Whether it has 1 or many, wherever it is, it means something in chemistry, of course. Like it does mean something, but not for us. Not until you're taking organic chemistry. And if you don't have to take that, don't take it. It's horrible. But for us, we're lucky. We just need to recognize. Carbon skeleton. I have like 4 hydroxyls up there. Okay, it's water soluble. That's it. I'm going to erase most of these. I'm going to erase them all. Any questions on that?
So a hydroxyl is just a combination of oxygen and hydrogen?
And I'm never going to make you guys draw it, but if you see another molecule, for example, if you look at a carbohydrate, like if you look at a piece of sugar on a molecular level, you're going to see hydroxyls. And I'll show you something. You'll recognize it at least a little bit. You know. So that's one. One of them is called hydroxyl. This next one I'm going to do. I'm going to pick this carbon here, and I'm going to put a double bonded oxygen. The first thing that I want to say to you is like something's wrong here. Like what I did is not, this molecule's not correct. I already asked you this question when we had all this silence in the room, but what's not right with this? Yes, whoever's talking is on the right track, saying it right. I didn't hear you completely. What'd you say? Say it with authority.
The carbon has too many bonds.
Yeah. If you're wrong, own your wrongness. Yeah, carbon has too many bonds. Okay, here's my other question to punish you for answering. What should I drop? You got to drop something. What would make like the most sense for you to drop? Yeah. I mean, look, if you drop this, you lose all of that. If you drop this, you lose all of that. This is a double bond. They're like slow dancing at an 8th grade prom. They're not going to let go of each other. Drop the hydrogen. Carbon always drops hydrogen. Remember what I said about hydrogen. It's a punk. It's mistreated. Atoms have no problem screwing hydrogen over. So if you got to drop something, drop the hydrogen. Yes, I got to drop the hydrogen. So this we call a carbonyl. Carbon, I don't know why it's called this. It's trying to make it make sense now that I'm looking at it. Carbonyl, found in carbohydrates. So when I look at a carbohydrate like high fructose corn syrup or starch that's in a potato, when I look at a carbohydrate, I'm going to see a bunch of hydroxyls, and I'm going to see a carbonyl also. So that's going to tip me off. Like, how do I know it's starch and not like protein, or maybe it's a piece of fat? Like the molecular of it, the molecular part, because carbohydrates have a carbonyl and usually more than one hydroxyl. But anyway, carbonyl. Where it is going to matter. But as far as the name we give it, but yeah, why did I put it there at that particular one? No reason. But if you find it, if I were to put this on the end, like I'm going to put another one out here at the end. So I'll put it like here. So this is on the last carbon. If it's on one of the ends, we call that an aldehyde. I know it's kind of some words that kind of suck. And if it's not on the end, we call it a ketone, which you might have heard before. So yeah, where it is has some implications. You'll hear of something, or you might have heard of something before called like acid ketosis. Like diabetics sometimes can get that. It's like ketosis. It's like that same word, ketone bodies, ketones. Kind of comes from this. But that's a carbonyl. I have two of them up there for no reason. And that's it. That's the second one. So we have hydroxyl, we have carbonyl. You don't have to draw yours like mine. It doesn't. Just, that's a carbon skeleton, that's a hydrocarbon, and it's got a couple carbonyls. So what does that mean? Well, at this point, you don't really know, but it's probably a carbohydrate. Oh, I didn't even spell the word found correctly, no. All right, I'm going to erase this. Third one, let me reset my molecule and put it back. All right, we're back. The next thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to take a combination of the previous two, the hydroxyl and carbonyl. I'm going to attach both of them to the same carbon. So hydroxyl, and I'm going to put a carbonyl right here. I'm just going to kind of slant it out like that. Okay. So when they're both here, hydroxyl, carbonyl, we're going to combine those two words, carboxyl. It's a combination of carbonyl and hydroxyl. Let's just put them together. And they're both on the same carbon. That one carbon on the left end has both of them. And this is going to tell me that this molecule is going to be acidic. I'll give you an example. I'll make this a little bit shorter. I think it's this short. I don't know exactly. I believe this is vinegar, which is like acetic acid. That is the structure of vinegar. You know, vinegar is acidic. Why is it acidic? Because it has a carboxyl group. You guys remember what makes things acidic? Like what atom? One of those four atoms that when I add it to something, it makes it acidic. I bet you shut down because you knew that stuff wasn't going to be on the quiz today. You're like, oh, I'll put that in my brain later. Do you remember what protons are? Like what another name for a proton is? You're not feeding my ego very well. That makes things acidic. That's a proton. The more of those I put in something, the more acidic that is. And we talked about, like we were talking about water and like how one of the hydrogens is like, forget it, I'm out of here, and it breaks away. Same thing here. Sometimes this hydrogen is like, I don't want to be in whatever this is. It breaks away and it leaves its electron behind. That's all you need to know. Carboxyl, acidic properties. This is just trying to make it something. This is formic acid. You know the stuff when like a fire ant stings you? That's what they're injecting in you. That's all it is. Just trying to make it pertinent. So that's the carboxyl. Let me put my stuff back. I'm going to leave this. Great. I had to look up. I had to cheat for a second here. All right. I'm going to leave that. And on this, I'm going to just going to go with my skin. There. Now I added nitrogen into it. I'll circle it in red. We call that an amino. So this is functional group number 4. I put both on. There's a carboxyl on the left side. There's an amino on the right side. I made it too big. I'm going to leave it anyway. I don't think you guys are going to know. Oh yeah, I totally made it too big. Oh, that's funny. That's off. All right. I was trying to make something that I wanted to. Carboxyl on the left, amino on the right. Carboxyl makes things acidic, amino makes things basic. Amino, what the thing that's going to tip you off is nitrogen. And if you think nitrogen, you're going to think protein. This is where I was trying to go with it. This is called an amino acid. This is like the thing that makes proteins. So when you see something that looks like that, you see a carboxyl on one end, an amino on the other end, that's a protein. That's like a dead giveaway. There's like these molecules we're going to start talking about after break. Carbs, lipids, proteins, nucleic acid. These four molecules are what make us. We're made out of carbohydrates or proteins, like my hair, protein. My skin, largely protein. In here, fat. In my muscles and stuff, carbohydrates. Carbohydrates feeding my brain right now. My brain's largely made of proteins. Inside my cells, nucleic acids. We're made from 4 different molecules. Those 4 molecules, as you see, are made from 4 atoms. The ones I keep pushing. Nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, whatever I miss. Those 4 atoms. And those 4 molecules, if you ever take nutrition, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to talk about carbohydrates and lipids and proteins. All right. Anyway, amino. That makes things basic.
Why is it called an amino acid?
So the name of the carboxyl group, it's got a nickname. Well, not a nickname. Another name called carboxylic acid. So they just took amino acid, like both ends. Is it acidic, an amino acid? No. It's weird, amino acids. Like one of the things that they can do is like, if your blood's too acidic, for example, this will make it more basic. If your blood's too basic, this will make it more acidic. So, because you're looking here and you're like, well, how can you have like one molecule that's like acid and base? That's one of the things that proteins can do. Like proteins in your blood, they can balance your acidity. That probably didn't answer your question, did it?
I was just wondering why it was 2 opposite words together.
You mean the acid and
Amino
base?
is basic, and then
Yeah. And that's why, because one end is an acidic property and the other end's an amino property. So they call it amino acid. Then when we get to fatty acids, like fats aren't really acidic. Why do we call them fatty acids? Let's see. I've got 2 more and they're a lot easier. I'm going to reset my molecule. Essay I did is I added sulfur. Sulfur's not one of the 4 atoms that we deal with. It's an important one for our body. Here, all you have to know is you combine these words. Sulfhydryl. You're probably going to see it once, like today, and I doubt you'll see it again. But when you have like proteins do everything in our bodies. Like they serve so many functions. We think a protein is just like muscle, or maybe it's hair and fingernails. It's so much more than that. But there's a couple of things that are important about proteins, and one thing is like the shape of the protein. It's got to be an exact shape. They're like keys. You can't change the teeth on the key, otherwise it doesn't unlock anymore. So the shape of the protein is very important, and the sulfhydryl helps to hold the shape of the protein. So maybe what I wrote is just that's enough, right? Just holds protein shape. I just added a sulfur up there, and that's it. And you're probably not going to see it after today. But this next one you will see. By the way, the other ones that I showed you, you're going to see. Even if you go on to take anatomy, it comes into play. Like, what do you do with proteins when you eat them? And if you want to use it for energy, you have to rip off the amino group, like the amino functional group. If you want to use that protein to make something like a hormone, you have to rip off the carboxyl group. So like, it all comes back. Anyway. All right. This last one doesn't look exactly like I'm writing it, but it's this general idea. It's a phosphorus with oxygens around it. Looks like this. It's not exactly like I wrote it. There's some double bonds in there and some ions or whatever, but just it's a P with O's around it. It's a phosphorus with oxygens around it. We call this a phosphate. That you will see. When we talk about DNA, RNA, there's a molecule. Our cell membranes have these in them. There's a molecule called ATP we'll talk about next week. ATP, you don't have to remember this, but it stands for adenosine triphosphate. It's got 3 of those on it. But anyway, I promise you this is going to end all of this chemistry stuff. It will end. Like, by next week, I'm going to be past it. We'll start talking about cells and things that are actually living. But that's a phosphate group. So now you have 6. And we're way past time for, I should have stopped me a long time ago. All right, let's take a break. We'll take like 10 minutes, and then I'll put the slides back up, and then we'll start looking at some molecules. I'm going to stop recording this.